This is a rather slow-moving book, and it's a prequel to the games. I was pretty tempted to give up after the first 100 pages because nothing was really happening. But I'm glad I kept reading. It is a fun story once you get into it. It just takes a while to really get through everything. It also sets up the events of the first game, which is nice. It tells a lot of what's going on in this world, so it's kind of cool. So when I read the prologue, I really didn't know what was happening. The first 3 chapters didn't really explain a lot, and there's a bunch of rather just mundane things that probably come into play later on, but it was just a rather boring read at the very beginning. If I had played the games or looked into the lore more, I would have known what was going on. I would have known who these people were. I would have known pretty much everything. But since I haven't really played anything past the first game, and it's been, dear Lord, it's been close to 30 years since I played it, I was kind of lost at first. It does pick up about the middle part of the book without really knowing anything. You can get through it. Probably halfway through the book, it gets really exciting. And that's pretty fun. It does tell a great story, but it just takes a while to get to it. So what really happens in here? Once you get through the prologue and the first couple chapters, things make a lot more sense. It starts with Atrus being born, his mom dying, and his father just kind of wandering off. It wasn't totally clear right away who these people were, aside from Gen, because no one else really gives you their name. It's weird, and when I read it the first time, it felt a little bit like there were 2 sons that were born. Even though there weren't, I had to go back and reread it because I got a little confused as to what was going on. It does become clear in the following chapters what happens, but that first part in the prologue, I was just baffled by what was happening. We then skip ahead about 15 years or so to Atrus, and he's growing up. He's living with his grandmother on the surface. They kind of live in a little, like a hole in the ground, essentially, and everything around them is desert. His grandmother, Anna, she sells paintings to random people that happen to live there, or at least pass through. They're really not that important, and she's teaching Atrus how to do everything, and she's trying to give him like a more broader education about what's going on in the world and how to act, how things interact with each other. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense right away, but she is trying to give him like creative ways to solve problems, and she is trying to explain just the different parts of an ecosystem and how they play into each other. She's really encouraging him to just go and do stuff, to explore things, to experiment with stuff. It's kind of fun to read through all of this and see how everything got set up in the first 150 pages or so, how that all comes full circle near the end of the book. So it's fun once you're done with it, but when you're reading it, you're just kind of wondering where this story is going. To give you an example of this, we get this story about a rainstorm. It seems to just come out of nowhere, but it does come up a few times later in the book when Atrus is, thinking about all the stuff that he learned from Anna. She taught him about the environment and how everything sort of works together to create a world. He didn't know that right away, but he eventually learns it. It's kind of interesting because she wakes him up so he can see how this once in like a 30-year rainstorm or something like that can sprout life from the desert where it doesn't normally happen. It's really cool to see how all this works. So then there's this other part up. Atrus might have killed his cat. He gets a cat early on, and he's messing around with I'm not sure what the exact thing is. Like, he's trying to grow plants to taste a certain way, or trying to have them be a certain way. So he's trying to hybrid plants and that sort of thing. And it kind of sounds like he kills his cat, but I'm not really sure that's what happened. Anyway, the cat's there for the first like quarter or a third of the book, and then it's just gone. So that was kind of odd. You have those two instances where he's learning about the environment, and then when he's learning about chemical reactions, and it kind of leads to a dead cat, and then that topic is just dropped through for the rest of the book. After a few other experiments, his dad returns and just decides he's going to take Atrus to the Denis Empire. I don't know how that's actually supposed to be pronounced, so I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing any of the words wrong here. Or at least, he's taking him to the ruins of the Empire. We get two stories of how the Denis Empire ended, so that's kind of interesting. One is told from Anna, and then the other one is told by Gen later on in the book, when Gen fills him in that Anna is, or at least he blames Anna for the downfall of the Denis Empire. It's kind of interesting to see just how these two stories work together and how Atrus kind of reacts to it. So that was kind of fun. We also find out that these three are the only Denis left in the world. And yeah, we haven't even gotten into the books yet. So it takes a while for this thing to really get going. So we kind of get into the books here, and we learn about those from Atrus. He learns about how the Denis had this ability to travel to new worlds through these different books, and it gets explained that, you need linking books, you need to have sort of the major book, and yeah, there are a whole bunch of rules given to us as well. So that's kind of cool to see all that work. We also learn that Gen has no imagination, he loves rules, he hates descriptions, and he really sucks at creating these worlds. Every world that he builds is fundamentally flawed, they're not stable, and they eventually fall apart. He also doesn't really know what he's doing. He's just taking lines from other books and putting those into his, and just kind of hopes that they work. And Atrus learns very quickly that he's better at this than his dad is, and yeah, then they start traveling to different worlds. Atrus kind of learns what's going on. He tries to fix the worlds that his dad's made. And he has some varying degrees of success with that. It's kind of interesting. We go to a few different ages that Gen has created. Ages are the names that are applied to these different worlds. Because Gen has no imagination whatsoever, he doesn't really name them anything, like Myst or Riven. He just names them by the numbers that he happens to have. So just age 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 37. We spend a lot of time in the 37th world, where Atrus gets to know a lot of the people before the world falls apart. And then, after Atrus tries to bail on his dad because his dad's a dickhead, he ends up getting imprisoned in this little room, but he's given a book that takes him to the fifth age. And he gets there, he meets a whole bunch of other people, and he finds out that his dad's trying to recreate the guilds. So the guilds were these were part of the Denis Empire. They were part of like the ruling class of the Denis. And Gen is trying to recreate all of that so he can rebuild the Denis Empire. But he really doesn't know exactly what he's doing, so he's just sort of making shit up as he goes. So we get to the fifth age, that is where Riven is located. And he learns that this is one of the locations where Gen trains the people that he creates in this world to be sort of the new members of the guild. And this is where he meets, and this is really annoying, it's either Katrin or Catherine, depending on the person that is talking to this girl, and she is one of like his best students. She's one of Gen's best students. And she is creating worlds that are just very imaginative and very stable. And she's way better at doing this than either Atrus or Gen is. So Gen decides he's going to marry this girl. Catherine ends up meeting Anna, but we don't hear about that until the end. They come up with these two plans to trap Gen on Riven, because Riven is unstable, it's going to fall apart, and that'll eventually kill Gen, I guess, or at least that seems to be their hopes. We find out that Catherine is the one who created the world of Myst, and shenanigans happen, essentially, and they end up trapping Gen on Riven, and the three of them, Atrus, Catherine, and Anna, they go to Myst, where they raise their family, they just have a grand old time, and Gen is trapped on Riven. That's essentially where the book ends, and then it leads us into the events of the first game. I was a little torn about this book. I didn't really know if I liked it or not. There were parts of it that I found fascinating, but overall it's just a very slow-moving story. We only see a handful of the worlds that are created by Gen, Atrus, and Catherine, and there's little to no information given to us about the world that the Denis Empire is located in, or really what happened to them aside from, hey, there was a civil war and then another civil war. That's all we really get. Most of it is just kind of glossed over for this father-son, not even really a redemption tale, but just this kid who finds out about his father and finds out that his father's a dick. And they explore the ruins of this empire that used to be amazing, but now is just ruins. And they kind of learn about what's going on, but you don't really get a whole lot of information. What we do get is just the bits and pieces that are handed to Atrus, but not much beyond that. I was more interested in hearing about them exploring the ruins, and I wish more of it had been focused on that, but they had to get into the first game, or at least get up to the events of the first game. And it was already a 400-page book, so yeah, we had to get this moving pretty quick. I also felt like I didn't really get to know much about Anna and Gen, aside from the fact that Gen blamed Anna for the fall of the Denis Empire, and then she changed her name to Anna, so yeah. I did like it, but it was just a little slow-moving for me. There are 2 more books in this series, so hopefully those are a little bit better. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.